The second season of X-Men 97 has been a very special journey for me, because it reinstilled my faith in the Marvel animated universe. The first season was a solid follow-up to the iconic 90s X-Men the Animated Series, and the second season only made it better. With a couple more seasons already confirmed, I think it's safe to say that these are good times for the X-Men fans out there. The Season 2 finale was nothing short of an epic showdown, and I expected no less from a season that promised brilliance in almost every episode, by picking some classic comic book references and blending it masterfully with innovative storytelling. Yeah, some of you might be disappointed by a couple of things straying from what we probably expected, but overall, it's still a pretty solid season. In this video, I'll break down the entire episode for you and elaborate on the ending so that you know what to expect when the next season arrives after an agonizing waiting period. There will be some major spoilers along the way, so you've been warned.
X-Factor and X-Force working together. Two birds, one stone.
The X-Factor and X-Force alliance have a clear mission. I was thinking that Cable got sidestepped a bit in the earlier episode, and the whole story about his destiny to kill Apocalypse was being ignored. Well, the season finale begins with him talking about that, and it becomes clear that his resolve to eliminate Apocalypse hasn't weakened in the slightest. The last episode ended with an unexpected twist as Valerie Cooper chose to ally with Cable, and now they both want the same thing, the death of Apocalypse. However, as we know, Apocalypse is trapped in Gambit's consciousness, but Cable's not getting the celestial energy signature yet, which he believes is courtesy of Gambit, who's been able to contain it so far. But it is fighting to get out, and when he does, Gambit, we know, will be gone. So Cable maintains solemnly that Gambit has to die in order to end Apocalypse, which I'm sure Rogue and the X-Men will have something to say about.
Sister! Rogue!
Search for a solution right where it all began. Beast, Rogue, and Nightcrawler are about to find a way to save Gambit, and they head for Apocalypse's ship, which they happen to encounter when they were stranded back in time in ancient Egypt. They want to destroy Apocalypse as well, but not at the cost of Gambit, and after Beast reboots the motherboard of the ship, Rogue asks for a way to end Apocalypse for good. The ship responds that Apocalypse was forged by the celestial will, and ending him would risk offending greater powers. Also, it warns that anyone entering the celestial shrine does not come out without paying a price. But Rogue is determined despite warnings from Nightcrawler, and she walks right into it.
My X-Men and I will not stand down.
So be it.
X-Men vs. X-Factor and X-Force. The scene turns to Gambit, who's still unconscious, and the X-Men are guarding him with everything they've got. Forge picks up X-Factor arriving at their location, and Professor Xavier gives out a telepathic message to Dr. Cooper, asking her to reconsider her decision. However, she seems pretty determined and argues that the X-Men are holding a potential weapon of mass destruction, and she doesn't have a choice. It's a stalemate because Xavier and his X-Men will not stand down, and the EMP field around their facility is about to be breached. Meanwhile, Wolverine has his claws out, all prepared for handling the twin threat of X-Factor and X-Force.
For one last fight.
Rogue signs up for the ultimate sacrifice. While the crisis with Gambit worsens, Rogue is in a world that cannot even be accessed by Professor Xavier. She comes up against Isan, who is no less than a godlike entity, and Isan doesn't think that Rogue belongs here. He says things like, life only advances at the expense of other lives, not through mercy, but through struggles. And you immediately know where Apocalypse gets the validation for his extreme theories. Rogue will have none of this, and she attacks Isan even though it literally burns away her skin and does him no damage. But now, Isan is intrigued and wants Rogue to prove her love for Remy by sacrificing her life for his. When she agrees, Isan says that she'll have what she seeks for one last fight. But once again, I wonder if they take away the death of Apocalypse from Cable. She emerges from the Celestial Shrine, but this is now a transformed version of Rogue, oozing energy and having recovered all the earlier damage that she sustained.
Apocalypse will kill billions! Nathan, no!
Clash of the Mutants. The best fight of the season. Meanwhile, the fight between the mutants intensify as Jubilee and Sunspot attack the vessel carrying X-Factor and X-Force, commanded by Valerie Cooper. Forge and Storm take on the Sentinels piloted by humans, who are also part of the attacking force, and Storm unleashes one of her thunder attacks to send the Sentinels crashing to the ground. Amidst all the confusion, Cable uses his technological prowess to break through the protective barrier, and soon he's face to face with his parents, Cyclops and Jean Grey. But they're unable to convince him to abandon the maddening quest to kill Gambit in order to eliminate Apocalypse. Wolverine faces off against Psylocke when she's able to sense something else. Also, I really love this well-choreographed fight sequence where Psylocke even tries to take control of Wolverine's mind, to which he says, "Nice try, but these brains have already been scrambled." Jubilee and Havoc have a little aerial battle as they dogfight amidst the chaos. And there are brief glimpses of Gambit along with some movement in the graphs, capturing his supposed heart rate. Is it him coming back to himself, or is it just Apocalypse emerging as the winner? Eventually, X-Force and X-Factor's alliance seems to get the better of the X-Men. Cable plays dirty and manages to remove the visor from Cyclops so that he can no longer control his deadly optic blast. The parents fighting their son for the greater good is what the X-Men stand for, but I can't wrap my head around the fact that Cable overcomes them so easily. Maybe they were really pulling their punches against their son. Also worth mentioning is Morph, who briefly turns into the dreaded Spider-Man villain Dr. Octopus at one point, and his presence has been a steady supply of cameos for the show. But once the fortress is breached, the writing's on the wall and it's time for the inevitable. Cable takes advantage of the distraction, and when Gambit appears before him, he shoots him in the head, seemingly killing him. For a moment, it seems like a quick victory, and I was almost disappointed that Apocalypse would be dealt with like a random thug on the street. The climactic twist and the return of Apocalypse. Just as every mutant on board stop fighting with each other and try to wrap their head around what just happened, there's an unexpected twist. It turns out that Apocalypse is far from destroyed, and now he emerges as Gambit is completely taken over. Even Jean Grey can no longer detect Gambit in there, and it seems like his consciousness has finally lost the battle. The revamped form of Apocalypse via Gambit is mighty, and even the most powerful mutants are no match for him. This is probably the only scene that does justice to the true power of Apocalypse, as he unleashes one of his attacks and ends up transforming every mutant in the tower into his puppets. Only Professor Xavier remains, but what can he do by himself? Apocalypse tells Xavier about how he's waited for a millennia for this moment, when the teacher finally learns the lesson. And you know he's not exaggerating, because they actually interacted back in ancient Egypt. But true to himself, Xavier remains unbothered and defiant, and he soon gets much needed support with the arrival of Rogue, who's really the trump card in this episode. She's now been granted celestial energy, even if it is for one last fight, and she proves the point Xavier was making about how the ones we care for are how we have always survived. Every mind-controlled mutant is freed as Rogue stands before Apocalypse, and this is the real showdown that we've all been waiting for. The enhanced version of Rogue is far too powerful, but I love how she still relies on what she does best, as she takes off her glove to absorb Apocalypse into herself. It's rather quick, and there's nothing that Apocalypse can do to stop her. She traps the essence of Apocalypse in a special gem and hands it over to Cable. I guess safekeeping the gem is the least that he can do, because clearly the prophecy that he was apparently destined for didn't turn out to be entirely true. Moreover, there's yet another happy ending in store for the X-Men, because Gambit is now free of Apocalypse's influence, and he's back to his normal self. Is it just me, or do his eyes still appear to be a bit too red? It's a hearty reunion as Rogue and Gambit kiss, but Rogue knows that she's promised herself as a sacrifice in return for the life of Remy. The celestial power wears off, but contrary to what we expected, she's still alive. As she wonders how this is even possible, Beast appears as he's seen holding Nightcrawler's Bible. Nightcrawler, however, is nowhere to be seen, and it immediately becomes clear that one of my favorite characters in the show has volunteered to be the sacrifice instead of Rogue. The flashback sequence just confirms that, as Nightcrawler appears before Isan and offers to complete the sacrifice by offering himself instead of his sister. His final words hit hard when he says that he knows everyone will grieve his death, but with time, his memory will be a seed from which new ones will grow. He goes out with his faith intact, and I think this does justice to a character like him, because he remains the unsung hero. Life for the X-Men goes on in the aftermath of the crisis, and it seems like the threat has been dealt with for now. Of course, with the X-Men, peace is never permanent, and the Season 2 finale reminds us that a new crisis is brewing somewhere. Yeah, there's a tiny post-credit scene that pretty much tells you about the next story arc that Season 3 might pick up on. Are Apocalypse and Nightcrawler really dead? Death is never a certainty in the Marvel Universe. I mean, we did see Gambit dying, and here he is back to his original self among the X-Men. So I always think twice before confirming the death of someone. However, when it comes to Nightcrawler, I don't think that we'll see more of him in the X-Men 97 continuity. He struck a deal with a literal god, and maybe there's no undoing that. His death also makes it balanced because now Gambit is back into the team, but he is gone. Also, I think it's fitting that a well-wisher and a genuinely good guy like him takes himself out for the greater good. At least he gets a hero's death and doesn't die helplessly like Magneto did earlier in the season. As for Apocalypse, death would probably be the wrong term to use given that he's effectively immortal. Yeah, his essence has been successfully trapped inside a gem, but there's no guarantee that this gem can't be accessed by some means, which will bring him back once again. Some part of me is disappointed that we didn't get the full potential of Apocalypse, and it was almost too easy to deal with a world-ending threat. Maybe this can be fixed in a future season if Apocalypse is brought back. But as of now, what I know for sure is that Season 3 has very different plans. And a clear hint has been dropped in the post-credits scene, which brings me to my next point.
Don't mind me. Just catching up on some reading.
What is Mystique up to in the post-credits scene? Even if you find the season finale to be underwhelming by the show's standards, the post-credits scene will definitely lift your mood. Valerie Cooper's in her office, and the news in the background reveals that the Anti-Mutant Coalition has won a stunning victory. President Kelly has conceded the election, and Graydon Creed is the new president, which is definitely not good news for the X-Men and mutants in general. Cooper scans through a classified file that has inputs on Mystique, when suddenly the door swings open and the real Dr. Valerie Cooper walks in. She's shot immediately by the imposter, who turns out to be Mystique, as she reads from the file that says,
Mystique determined to attack the United States?
a second shot probably seals the fate of the real Dr. Cooper, but the real question is, how long has Mystique posed as Dr. Cooper? Well, I can't tell you for sure until I have an official confirmation, but there have been some wild fan theories about this, especially after the Genosha episode in Season 1, when Valerie Cooper had a strange reaction to Rogue arriving. We all know that Rogue is Mystique's daughter, so now it makes sense. But where was the real Dr. Cooper all this while? Also, I could just be overthinking it, and Mystique has just broken into Cooper's office now. But surely she's going to pose as Cooper for a while now. It's worth mentioning that the file that Mystique was looking through has pictures of some of the past members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, like Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. I wonder if they're having some interesting cameos in the next season. What Season 3 might look like. The second season had a lot to do with cosmic level threats like Apocalypse, and I think we wouldn't mind if the story heads back to the real world threats for a change. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are probably going to show up in Season 3, and this actually highlights the regular crisis that all mutants have to deal with. Mystique is surely going to play a key role, and Graydon Creed as the new president will probably mean a lot more drama and restrictions for the X-Men. I'm also quite sure that someone's going to try to assassinate Graydon Creed and frame the X-Men for it, and who better than Mystique to be the one? In short, we have exciting times coming up, and I just hope that we don't have to wait too long for the third season. I think it'd be unfair to judge the show based on one particular story arc that probably should have been handled better. Yeah, I was hoping for a grand ending and the defeat of Apocalypse is perhaps more dramatic than it is thrilling, but it still has plenty of big moments, including the climactic twist with Nightcrawler's sacrifice. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this exciting second season of X-Men 97, and share your thoughts on the twist in the post-credit scene and what it means for the future of the show. If you like this video, please like, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any more of our marvelous videos. Stay safe, have a great day, and as always, stay marvelous.